This Canon EF to Sony E-mount smart autofocus adapter has a built-in variable ND filter. Hey everyone, Sean here with Fotodiox.com, and today we're taking a look at our Canon EF to Sony E-mount Fusion ND throttle adapter. Now we've offered this adapter for a number of years, but this is our new improved version. We've completely overhauled it, we've put new firmware in it, and we've added some functions. We've got a function button right here, which you press down when you first turn on your camera, and that calibrates the camera to the adapted lens. And we also have a micro USB port for updating firmware when future firmware comes. For those of you not familiar with this adapter, it is a Canon EF and EFS to Sony E-mount lens adapter. Basically, it allows you to mount a Canon EF lens like this 50mm here to a Sony E-mount camera like this Sony a7R II. You just line up the dots, mount it in place. Then you just hold down the function button, turn on the camera, and the Sony camera fully calibrates to the adapted Canon lens and gives you full electronic control of aperture, autofocus, and image stabilization. Now, like I mentioned in the intro, what makes this adapter unique is it has a built-in variable ND filter. So with just a turn of this ring here, you can go from 2 to 8 stops of variable ND filtration. Now, why would you need a variable ND filter built into an adapter? Well, first off, it's just ease of use. If you're adapting Canon EF lenses to a Sony E-mount camera and you're using different sizes with different size filter threads, you're gonna have to invest in either a bunch of different ND filters to put on different lenses, or you're gonna have to use adapter rings to adapt one big ND filter to the biggest lens and then, down to the smaller ones. But by having the variable ND filter built right into the adapter, you completely get rid of this issue, and any Canon EF lens you're adapting automatically has variable ND filtration built right in. Some uses for variable ND. Well, if you're a filmmaker and you want to shoot shallow depth of field video, if you're shooting it at 24 frames a second, you're gonna want to have your shutter speed at about 50. So if you're in bright sunlight and you open your lens open all the way, you have way too much light coming through your lens. You're not going to be able to get a usable exposure. But with this adapter, all you have to do is crank in the variable ND, cut the light, suddenly you have a usable exposure, and you can shoot beautiful shallow depth of field video in bright sunlight. Also, if you're a filmmaker, you might very well be using a flat picture profile. And generally speaking, flat picture profiles in Sony cameras require a higher ISO, which means you're gonna need an ND filter even more. Now, like I said before, you can get an ND filter to put on the front of your lens, but why do that when you can have it built right in and just turn the ring to adjust how much light you wanna cut coming through the lens. So if you're a filmmaker, the ND throttle fusion makes your life a lot easier. Now, there is one limitation to this adapter. It starts at 2 stops of variable ND. So if you're shooting in a dark location and you need all the light you can get, this adapter is not gonna be very useful because it is gonna cut 2 stops of light. So that's why I recommend people using this adapter also get a standard fusion adapter that does not have built-in variable ND for shooting in low light situations. Now, if you're a photographer, this adapter might not seem as interesting, but it's also a pretty useful tool. Now, obviously, if you're shooting shallow depth of field in bright sunlight, you can just speed up your shutter speed. You're not really locked into a specific shutter speed like you are with video. But let's say you want to shoot a long exposure. Generally speaking, really long exposures require a neutral density filter. And having a neutral density filter built right into your adapter means you don't have to screw around with putting an ND filter on the front of your lens, especially if you're shooting with a wide angle lens. Maybe your lens doesn't even have filter threads. Using the ND throttle fusion to adapt your lens to your Sony camera means you don't have to worry about putting any filter on the front. You've got it built right in, and you can shoot beautiful long exposures even in really bright conditions. Basically, set your exposure as long as you want and then crank in the variable ND to limit the amount of light coming through so you can get a usable exposure. The Canon to Sony Fusion ND throttle has a built-in tripod foot, and this is Arca Swiss compatible. So if you have an Arca Swiss tripod, you can just pop this right on. And this tripod foot is also useful for balancing larger Canon EF lenses, with your small Sony E-mount camera. But if you don't want the tripod foot on the camera, the adapter kit from Fotodiox includes a wrench, so you can actually loosen it. So there you go, you don't have the tripod foot in the way anymore. Like I said before, the adapter comes with a micro USB port, so when we come out with new firmware, all you have to do is plug in a micro USB data cable and update the firmware with your computer. The adapter also has a function button that you hold down to calibrate your Sony camera to the adapted lens. You just hold it down, turn on the camera, and wait for the lens motor to stop moving, and your lens is calibrated to your camera. Okay, that was a quick look at our updated Canon EF to Sony E-mount Fusion ND throttle adapter. If you have any questions about this adapter, comment below. I'd love to help you out. Click the links in the description below to learn more about this adapter and maybe get one for yourself, and click right here to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos just like this one. I'm Sean with Fotodiox.com, and thanks for watching.